Welcome to First United Lutheran Church. This is the message from Sunday. It's our prayer that this message touches your heart and helps to guide you in your life. Let's listen.
This is the 14th installment of a Bible survey series called The Story. And the writers of this, Max Lucado and Randy Frazier, who put this series together, what they talked about, if you've been following along, there's an accompanying book. They actually talked about movies in this particular installment. I don't know about you, how well you like movies. I know that Bonnie, you like books a lot. She especially likes to read Westerns. Yep. And it actually has worked out quite well because as I've been aging, I'm losing hearing in this ear. She sits there. If she talked, I wouldn't hear it anyway. So she reads books as we drive. For me, I do read, and I end up having to read quite a bit. But I do like movies. But I like good movies. I remember Bonnie and I had gone to one movie, I think it was a year after we were married, and I think it was rated G. It had a host of good actors, actresses in it, and I thought, well, it's going to be a great movie. It's got Jack Palance. I mean, he really makes a good villain. I think he was going to be a villain in this movie. And we stayed for about 10-15 minutes until we couldn't stand it any longer. Have you watched movies like this, where you just, if it's on TV, you would change the channel? When you're in the theater, you can't change the channel. So we walked out and went out and had a bite to eat. It just wasn't worth watching. Then there are other films that you come across that there's a takeaway. You go see a film like The Bucket List, and you begin to ask yourself, are there some things in my lifetime that I really want to see or do before I go to the grave? You understand films like that, where there's a takeaway? I'm not sure what they were thinking when they did Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But other than that, I mean, there are films that have an actual takeaway. These films have some things in common. They have a setting, they have characters, a point of view, a plot that usually involves some tension, or a problem that's to be solved, a resolution to that problem, and an overall theme. And what makes for a good movie is solving the plot, solving the problem, is what draws you in. Sometimes you have a tragic ending. The problem really doesn't get solved and you walk away pretty sad. Sometimes there are happy endings. Can you picture that our lives in a way are kind of like a movie, and each one of us have a plot that we're involved with? Want a happy ending? We all have choices. Well, first, there's a setting. You find that in 1 Kings 12. It says, as Solomon grew old, his heart turned after other gods. That's 1 Kings 11, 4-6. His heart was no longer fully devoted to the Lord as the heart of David, his father, had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord, did not follow the Lord completely as David, his father, had done. You need to understand that Ashtoreth worship and Moloch actually involved in some of its worship, where it was fully practiced, they would pass infants through the fire. They would sacrifice a human being. Ashtoreth worship sometimes involved prostitution as a part of worship. And so we're not talking about a little slipping away in Solomon's life. We're talking about profoundly slipping away from a relationship with God. That's the setting. Well, as Solomon grew old, he not only got into idolatry, But he began to oppress the very people that he previously had served. Think about how Solomon started, where God appears to him in a dream and says, Solomon, ask me for anything. Ask me for anything. And what does Solomon say? God, I don't really know how to be a good king. And I don't know how to, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but this is what he's saying. I don't know how to serve these people. I don't know how to serve them. He started out serving the people that he ruled. And at the end of his life, he wasn't serving them, he was oppressing them. A good king had now become a wicked king. So the second thing here, the characters, you have Solomon. You have his son, Rehoboam, who's from the tribe of Judah. And you have Jeroboam, who is from the tribe of Ephraim. Jeroboam was someone who was just a natural leader that people looked to. And what happened as Solomon began to oppress the people of Israel, Jeroboam came as really one who said, you shouldn't be doing this. A prophet came up to him and said, you know, that God is going to make you king. But he basically said, don't do it on your own. Jeroboam decided to act on his own. It didn't surprise God. There's an upper story going on. That's how God is always wanting to redeem us to himself. And the lower story is all the everyday things that are taking place. And Jeroboam rebels against Solomon, ends up having to flee to Egypt. But all of this was brought on because Solomon became wicked. He began oppressing the people. And so Jeroboam rebelled. The other character of significance is Rehoboam, who is Solomon's son. And Rehoboam, when he became king, was faced with a decision. And that is to follow in the ways that his father did at the end of his life. Or to go to where his father started. And be a servant king. Well, this point of view is really just the upper and lower story. God has a purpose, but whether or not we want to align to God's purposes depends on us. The lower story is the everyday life. What is Rehoboam going to do? What is Jeroboam going to do? The plot. That is the story. Every good story has a plot with conflict. So here we have an oppressed people. They're angry. We have Jeroboam, who has risen up as a leader. He goes to Egypt. And yet, Jeroboam and the people approach Rehoboam. And do you know what they say? Your father oppressed the country. But if you'll be a servant, we will be your servant. Are you hearing this? What a golden moment. There had been an uprising. Jeroboam had led the uprising. And here's Jeroboam coming and saying, we will be your servant. Only will you be a servant king to us. If you will serve us, we will serve you. Does that sound like that's okay? What an opportunity. They had already had this rebellion on their hands, and here was a moment that they could have put the rebellion behind them and been one as a people. The old advisors to the king saw what Solomon had been doing, and they were trying to convince Solomon. How do I know that? Because of the advice they gave Solomon's son. It's not explicit, it's implicit in the text. This isn't something new that these elders thought up. Solomon was not listening to their advice. Unfortunately, neither did Rehoboam listen to their advice. Their advice was, Rehoboam, if you serve these people, they will be your servants forever. Instead, he decided to increase the burden on his people. And the sick thing about that is a kingdom that did not have to be divided. It didn't have to be divided. It became divided. The plot was the conflict that Solomon created and that Rehoboam continued. So then what was the resolution? Well, when all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king, "What share do we have in David or his son?" What share do we have in what you're doing? There's nothing here for us. There's nothing here for us anymore. And so at that moment, 10 out of the 12 tribes exited and no longer would serve those in the lineage of David. It was divided up actually into 10 and 2, although part of the text this morning said only one tribe was there, but in reality it ended up being Judah and Benjamin. And why was that? Well, first of all, because Rehoboam was of the tribe of Judah, so Judah stuck to their homeboy. But also, the house of David had showed kindness to Saul and his descendants. Saul persecuted David, tried to kill David, and yet David never would lift a hand against Saul. And so the tribe of Benjamin, which was the tribe that Saul was from, also remained loyal to the lineage of David. 10 tribes that were in the northern kingdom now, and 2 in the southern kingdom. Well, the resolution was division. But what's the theme here? The theme is that God is always trying to redeem people. He has a plan to get us back. And now, even though God's nation is divided, God is still trying to work in the hearts of these people to draw them back to relationship with Him. It doesn't matter what's going on in these earthly kingdoms. There's a far greater kingdom that lasts for eternity. And people within either of those kingdoms need to hear God's voice. You might notice that in the northern kingdom, which had its share of ungodly kings, that's where God seemed to send most of the prophets, to the very place that wouldn't listen to them. How's that? Is that why people go to church? So they don't listen to the pastor? No. I think it is. So the upper story is how God is still at work, even though earthly kingdoms divide. But the lower story is where we can draw a huge lesson here. Because the real theme here is that decisions matter. Now, this time of the year, one of my favorite movies ever comes on TV. And people say that, if you like this film, it is so overacted. I don't care, I love it. It's a Wonderful Life. Do you know, when this was in the theaters, it just literally tanked. And I don't know why. I love this movie. And one of the reasons I love it is the takeaway. The takeaway is that your life matters. There's that part of the film where Jimmy Stewart says, I just wish I'd never been born, that would solve everything. And then you have his guardian angel, the one that has no wings, tells him, oh my goodness. And then he was never born. And then he discovers a lot of terrible things that happened because of the void that was left because he'd never been born. You watched the film. A druggist, a pharmacist, goes to prison because he wasn't there. George Bailey wasn't there as a little boy to stop him from accidentally sending poison to some sick kids. Well, why did he do that? Well, he got drunk. Well, why did he get drunk? Because he just got a telegram that his son had died. And so this little boy saves this druggist from making a horrible mistake. Well, George Bailey isn't there. The druggist goes to prison for manslaughter. And it goes on. His younger brother, who would have saved an entire troop carrier ship, is a pilot. but to see he wasn't there to save his younger brother who broke through the ice when he was a little kid. And you look at all of these things, all these consecutive little stories, and at the end it says, you really have a wonderful life. There are ripples in everything that we do. The decisions that we make, how seemingly insignificant they may be, all have ripples. When Solomon persecuted the people, he did it. He became such a wicked king in the end. He made Jeroboam the rebel that Jeroboam was. And even then, Jeroboam was willing to give up any aspiration to be in charge. He would like to see the kingdom united. But Rehoboam, no way. You see the decisions? And then Jeroboam, he gave up on a united kingdom. Sure, I'll take 10 tribes. He became king of the northern kingdom. But all these decisions, a divided kingdom. Why? Because of ripple effect. You know, bad decisions have a negative impact, but also good decisions have a positive impact. And so consider how your decisions, how they impact your family, your business, your money, your neighborhood. Think in terms of generations. What will your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren have to say about you? What legacy are you leaving them? You know, I can tell you on my mom's side. Now, I never met either of my grandfathers. You know, sometimes lifespans were not as kind. But my grandfather, what do I know about him? Here's the legacy. Well, he was a raging alcoholic, used to beat his kids. Yeah, that's the legacy. What's the other thing that I know about this grandfather? Well, he was a stubborn man. He was out chopping some wood, ended up wounding himself in the leg with an axe, wouldn't go to the doctor, got gangrene in the leg and died. Wow, the two facts that I know about Grandpa. Stubborn and died because of it, and an alcoholic. Do you think that if he had a choice, that that's the legacy that he would want passed on to his grandchildren? I don't think so. I don't think he would ever want that to be what his grandson or granddaughter knows about it. And so consider the decisions that you make. You see, God has a plan for our lives. And if we open ourselves up to those plans, God turns our life into a wonderful life. And I don't care where it starts, whether as a little boy or a little girl, you're opening your life to God influencing your choices and your decisions. Or whether you got a few miles on your odometer. You've been down the road a piece. And you go, you know, God, I guess I haven't asked you a lot about my decisions in life. And you start saying, you know, I should have been asking you before to influence my decisions. Because God can turn the impact of our choices into positive impact in the lives of others. And so that's the message of the kingdom torn in two. It didn't have to happen. And if you and I allow God to influence our decisions, if we allow the upper story to become a part of the lower story, we share in a wonderful life. That's what God intends for us. So perhaps maybe today you're saying, wow, Lord, I'd like to start writing a new story. Good plan. Very good plan. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your outrageous love for us. You chose us. You chose to go to the cross for us. You chose to send the Holy Spirit to us. You fully intend to equip us for this life. That you don't abandon us, but instead, you want to walk with us. And at times, when we're truly broken, you'll carry us. Father, will you help us with decisions, with choices in this life? May we open ourselves to the wisdom of the ages, to you, to invite you to speak into our lives so that the choices that we make in this world are submitted to you and your kingdom, and that they bear the influence and the fingerprints of God Almighty. Show us what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Show us what it means by encouraging us, by showing us the results of the good choices that we make. So we want to make more and more good choices. Lord, may your upper story thread its way through our lower story, we pray. In the name of Jesus, who taught his disciples to pray. Let's join together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Thank you for listening to this message from First United Lutheran Church.